I think looking at tokens, it's a metric, just like any metric. I think tokens for the sake of tokens isn't always the thing that matters. I think at a large engineering organization, the more important measure of productivity is how much code is actually getting merged. It's very common for people to burn a lot of tokens and not actually have any of that code see the light of day. I burn a lot of tokens as the CEO trying to play PM or engineer for a day that don't actually see the light of day. So at the end of the day, I think the most interesting thing is token efficiency, which is what percentage of the tokens that you burn end up getting merged. Is token maxing done? I think there are still going to be companies that are in their let it rip phase, and letting engineers be budget unconstrained I don't think is necessarily a bad strategy. But at certain scale, like Microsoft, if you're letting every engineer let it rip, it's a pretty big inference bill that you're spending. So I think we'll kind of see companies play different sides of the coin.
All right, we are live with Kayvon Beykpour, the CEO of Macroscope, which is one of our sponsors. We love our sponsors. So shout out Kayvon. Welcome to MTS.
Hey guys, good to see you. You're not wearing your swag today. You look great though.
Yeah, we should do a quick costume change before.
We should. So my first question would be, what do you think about token maxing? Which for our audience, in case they don't know, is this trend that companies were doing over the last few months where they would encourage their employees to spend as much money on LLM tokens as possible. The idea being that this is just part of the future. We need to be adapting to it. But it seems like companies have cooled off on that quite a bit. So what's your take on token maxing in the current era?
I mean, I think looking at tokens, it's a metric, just like any metric. It's interesting to see how certain things track. But I think tokens for the sake of tokens isn't always the thing that matters. I think at a large engineering organization, what you actually care more about, that's a more important measure of productivity, is how much code is actually getting merged. And sometimes token usage can be, relevant in assessing that. But oftentimes, it's very common for people to burn a lot of tokens and not actually have any of that code see the light of day. And so one of the things we actually do at Macroscope is we measure actual engineering output that gets merged into production. Sometimes that lines up with token spend, but often it doesn't. Like I burn a lot of tokens playing with lots of features as like the CEO trying to play PM or engineer for a day that don't actually see the light of day. So at the end of the day, I think the most interesting thing is token efficiency, which is what percentage of the tokens that you burn end up getting merged. And that's one of the things that our product actually helps you visualize. I think is token maxing done? I think there are still going to be companies that are in their let it rip phase. And I think there's benefits to that, just like letting engineers be budget unconstrained. I don't think is necessarily a bad strategy. But at certain scale, I think it was Uber, maybe I read an article or a tweet yesterday that, or maybe it was Microsoft, they've completely gone the other way, because at Microsoft scale, if you're letting every engineer let it rip, it's a pretty big inference bill that you're spending. So I think we'll kind of see companies play different sides of the coin.
Right. So we're talking about Macroscope. For the audience who might not know, what is Macroscope? What does Macroscope do?
So Macroscope helps with a couple different things. First, we help you understand what's actually happening at your company. What changes are being shipped into the code base? How is the product evolving? What's everyone working on? All these things that, unless you are Ben at Pulsia, if you have an engineering team at your company, you're constantly wondering what's happening. And the old-fashioned way of solving this problem was meetings and documents and Jira and Linear and sort of proxies for the source of truth. And what Macroscope does is use the actual source of truth, which is the code base, to build you a live story of what's actually changing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we help to automated code review. Shipping bugs is very undesirable. And in this day and age, as every engineer is shipping more code, and as you have autonomous agents writing more and more code, the risk of AI slop, the risk of bugs is higher than it's ever been. And Macroscope helps you prevent shipping bugs. And we've built what we think is the highest signal to noise code reviewer out there. And so those are the things we help customers on, whether you're a small startup or whether you're a large enterprise with hundreds or thousands of engineers. Macroscope can help you with those two things.
So, what are some of the things that are different about Macroscope's code reviewer compared to other code reviewers or compared to older ways that companies would do code review?
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time really focusing on two things. One, getting our code review to be as high signal as possible, meaning we want to find as many of the bugs as we possibly can with as little noise as possible. The gotcha that I think frustrates most users of code review tools is that they're very noisy. Noisy in the context of code review means you get a bunch of false positives. And there's nothing that erodes trust more than a bunch of false positive comments. And so we've done a lot of work to reduce the amount of noise and to make sure that if you get a comment from Macroscope, it's a comment that you want to pay attention to. And so we've done a bunch of our own benchmarking and a bunch of independent benchmarking from other organizations that show that Macroscope finds more bugs than the rest and does so without spamming you with a bunch of useless comments. In terms of like what we do differently to achieve that, like many other tools, we have an agentic code review system. But the thing that's pretty novel about our approach is we're not just using the best, LLMs to do our agentic code review, but we've actually built a bunch of what we call code walkers. So we are deterministically walking the code base using the AST, which is the abstract syntax tree of the programming language. So, you might have a Python repo or a Swift repo or a Go repo, pick your language. We have created a way of walking the code base to create a graphical representation of how the code base actually works. And that allows us to provide a lot of useful context to the LLMs very cost effectively. Meaning, instead of burning a bunch of tokens to get the context to do a good code review, we can deterministically, very efficiently, very quickly, and without spending a bunch of inference dollars, provide that context to the LLM to kind of shortcut the review. The net effect of that is that we sort of do the three things that customers care the most about, which is we can have extremely high recall, extremely high precision, meaning we can find as many bugs as possible with as few false positives as possible, and with as low of a cost as possible, which is the third thing that customers care about. So Anthropic recently announced their code review tool a couple months ago, and they actually in their own tweet thread said that the average cost per review is $20 to $25 per review. And that's not even a pull request. Like there might be 10 reviews in a pull request. So $20 to $25 per review. By comparison, Macroscope is between $1 and $1.50 per review. So like literally 25 times cheaper. And according to our benchmarks and independent benchmarks, we actually have higher precision and higher recall. So the net effect of that, again, is you get better code review for a very small fraction of the price, which we think, if you're a very large enterprise, you don't want to be spending 25 times more for worse performance if you can avoid it.
Can you tell us a little bit about the origin of your team? So you guys previously, you and your co-founders started Periscope. And then before that, you were at Twitter. So could you tell us about like the journey that you guys made there?
Yeah, Periscope was actually my second company. I started my first company in college. As you might know, Periscope was a live streaming app that ended up getting acquired by Twitter. I went on to lead the product team and lead consumer engineering at Twitter up until 2022. In terms of like, how did we end up working on Macroscope? I led the product team at Twitter for 4 years. And one of the core parts of my job, I think a very common thing that a head of product has to do is like understand what's happening at the company. And at the time, this is not the case anymore, but at the time, Twitter had like 1,200 engineers. And like an enormous part of my job was just understanding like, what the fuck is everyone working on? Like, how are we spending our engineering resources? Because at any given point in time, I could have told you the 3 or 4 most important things we should be doing. But that is not necessarily what the engineering team was focused on. And it's not like you could even ask a single engineering leader, like, what did you get done this week? Because the answer to that question requires that game of telephone that we talked about. So I feel like I lived this pain very viscerally. Like it felt like flying blind at like a multi-billion-dollar public company, which I think wasn't a unique Twitter thing. Like I think every company suffers from this. And the larger the company, the more severe the pain. And I think the advent of coding agents just multiplies this problem. Because now imagine you have a bunch of engineers building stuff, and then you have a bunch of autonomous agents shipping stuff. The rate of change to a product, the rate of change to a code base is faster and larger than it's ever been. And so that was the seed that motivated this problem of, we ought to be able to build an AI-based system that helps deliver the right level of understanding to the right person. IC engineer wants one fidelity, one resolution, one altitude of understanding. An engineering manager wants a different one. A product leader wants a different one. And the CEO wants like a 30,000 foot view. And so Macroscope was sort of the solution that we envisioned to this problem.
Great. And with Macroscope, what specifically helps with that clarity problem of like not knowing what people are working on within your team?
Well, for any company that builds software, the source of truth of what's happening is the code, right? Like you're a software-based company, and so just even looking at the code base as the single source of truth can tell you a lot about what's happening, who's working on what's changing. And then once you add in other sources like your issue management system and Linear and Slack and your help center and your customer service system, and these are all integrations that Macroscope supports, you start to enrich that understanding of what's changing and what's happening with all of the other things that give you kind of a 360 view of what's happening. But I think insofar as you are a product leader or an engineering leader, if you're a CEO who cares about like the product development process, the code base is the kernel. It is the most important thing. And prior to LLMs, it was just kind of inscrutable. It's not like the CEO could open the code base and like look at GitHub and understand what their team was doing for the last week or two. But LLMs completely changed that, because you can have an agentic system go figure that out and give Theo a different story than Kayvon, than Ben. Like that interpolation, that storytelling of giving the right amount, the right resolution, the right context, the right audience is sort of right up the alley of what LLMs are really good at if you can set them up with the right context. And so that's fundamentally what Macroscope is. It's a code-based understanding engine that delivers the right information to the right person at the right time.
Right. Well, pretty amazing stuff. We love Macroscope. We love all of our sponsors. Thank you so much, Kayvon, for coming on MTS.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thank you. See ya.
Yeah, have a great one.
MTS is an ex-native live streaming news and interview show covering technology, business, politics, and culture as it happens. Catch us every weekday live on X, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by Macroscope. The last time I went to San Francisco, I found that I couldn't go anywhere, even to the coffee shop, without hearing some founder talk about how they're shipping faster than ever. What they're not saying is that nobody on the team actually knows what got shipped, who shipped it, or whether it's about to break something in production. Macroscope is the AI code-based understanding company, and they fix that. They have 3 core products. The first one is Status, the best way to understand what's happening at your company and what all your engineers and agents are shipping. The second one is Code Review. All this extra code being shipped needs a robust defense layer. Macroscope is the highest signal code reviewer with the least noise. The third is Agent, a single layer of intelligence that synthesizes all the tools in your stack, issue management systems, code, docs, logs, and more, and answers questions, takes actions, and automates workflows for your team. Like an omniscient, always-on, uber-capable senior engineer, plus a product manager, plus a TPM, plus ops person that helps your team be 10 times more productive. Head to macroscope.com/MTS to get started. That's macroscope.com/MTS.
At every founder dinner in SF, everyone's talking about models and data. Nobody's talking about the real bottleneck in AI adoption. It's the connective tissue, the layer between your models, agents, APIs, and context. Kong gives you the platform to power and govern that connectivity. The control tower that governs your traffic, cuts your costs, and sets guardrails for agent-to-agent interactions. Without it, you're not monitoring the situation. The situation is monitoring you. The infra decisions you make in the next 12 months decide whether you're shipping in the agentic era or posting through it from the sidelines. Because when AI traffic scales 100x, The companies without proper connectivity and governance don't just slow down, they can't function at all. Kong manages all of your AI traffic in motion, giving you the full picture regardless of traffic type, and adding a governance layer regardless of model, agent, or architecture. Fortune 500s run on it, AI native startups ship on it. If you're serious about AI, visit konghq.com.